Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. My guest today, transformation coach, facilitator, and speaker. He's a best-selling co-author of Visionary Male Leaders. He's the podcaster of True Freedom, living in Australia. Please welcome Bodhi Aldridge. Did I do it justice?
You did. Thank you, my friend. Lovely to be here, Roy, and welcome to the listeners.
Right. I'm going to ask you to kind of touch on your journey, because I believe you actually were studying, you were a lawyer as well. But I mentioned it prior to recording, and for those watching on YouTube, BitChute, or Rumble, the picture in the background is actually beautiful. And it's you and your wife on a beautiful coast, but it's just kind of showing, as I mentioned to you, what's important to you. And why I say that is I see people, they'll have their football team or whatever, and you wouldn't even know they have children, or you wouldn't even know they're married. So when people show what's important to them, I think they're putting it out there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a beautiful acknowledgement. And thank you, Roy. I mean, when I work with a lot of my clients, it's very much, if you look at behavior, behavior defines values. No matter what you espouse are your values are represented by your behavior. People go, I want to get fit, I just don't go to the gym. My family's important to me, I just don't have time. And so for me, my values, my beautiful wife of over 40 years, 4 children, 10 grandchildren, it's an important part of my journey, even though I've made as many mistakes as any father and any parent, I'm sure. And that's been my journey, I guess, Roy, is, my wife and I actually met when we were at school, at high school. And, it was, one of those meetings where we fell in love. And then before we knew it, we were at university, we had a child, we got married. And I think that's been a big part of my journey, learning about myself, because, when I finished school, my mum was a single mother. My father left when I was quite young, and I asked Mum, what will I do? And she said, well, go and be a lawyer, go and be an attorney. And I'm like, okay. I scraped in. I just got enough marks to get in, and a lot of good boys, I did what Mum suggested, and so I started university. My wife did incredibly well at school. She decided to be a teacher. So here we were, both at university with children, married, very young, in our 20s. Most of our friends were still out partying. And suddenly I had to kind of do my own journey of, becoming a man, becoming a father, becoming a husband, exploring, what I would now call the hero's journey. And, meditation became a very big part of that. I now teach embodied presence as one of my foundational practices. And practiced as a lawyer for 20 years, 4 children. We left the big city. We were living in a regional area here in Australia and, doing quite well, yet an opportunity came. I got a business coach to coach my legal practice. And she pretty quickly said to me, you're not that passionate about being a lawyer, are you? And I was like, well, it was serving a purpose. And she invited me to join and train as a coach with her coaching business and helped me sell my legal practice. And that was over 20 years ago now. I've been coaching, facilitating, working with leaders around the globe. And for me, the 3 anchors, particularly working with men in their masculine, I work a lot around presence, purpose, and passion for life. How do we cultivate those things, which I think are the 3 legs of the stool for the masculine? If you see a man who's present, clear on his purpose, and has passion for life, I would say that he's demonstrating, values which probably will hold him in good stead.
And like you mentioned that, you were advised to go, be a lawyer. I've seen a load of people doing that, and they basically, the parents are kind of saying, do this. And I know a lot of lawyers, and the same with accountants. Most of them, they don't kind of, at a certain level, get away. They feel like, I spent 6-8 years, as well as my career, building it up to walk away from it. But a lot of people are miserable. So, like, what's the best way to kind of try to make the transition when you're stuck? Because it's hard to have purpose and passion when you don't have the passion for, because if you don't have the passion in the job, it's hard to have passion in life. And I think when you know, what I tell people is, when I see, if you're on a Sunday night, you're kind of, you're gloomy because you're thinking of the week ahead. You're in the wrong job. You should be jumping out of bed no matter what day of the week it is. So how would you advise people of when they kind of realize, this isn't exactly the road that I wanted to be on?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, and great question, if you think about leadership, if you think about parenting, if you think about being a business owner, the real key is that it comes from the inside out. You know, like there's a real desire in our culture to, if I get the outside world looking a certain way, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be peaceful, then I'll be joyful. And for most of us, that's all we're doing. We're shuffling the external world, trying to get it to look a certain way so we can feel, you know, passion and joy. And, you know, my own journey was, you know, in my late 20s, one of the first shifts I made in my early 30s is I went into nature and I just took time to reconnect with my true self. You know, I had 4 children. I had all the masks that we wear, you know, the lawyer, the father, the husband. And so to any of the listeners who feel stuck, you know, the first thing I would suggest is, how do you find a way to just do some reflection? Yeah, like just to be a bit more present with yourself. Now, depending where you are in your life, you know, some people may need a circuit breaker where they may need to take a week's retreat or go into nature, you know, or go for, you know, walking. For others who are busy, you know, certainly like I was, married, mortgage, business, kids, like a lot of my clients, again, just cultivating some simple practices to just reflect. The studies are clear, Roy, that the most effective leaders have a daily reflective practice. Yeah, and reflection can be meditation, it can be prayer, it can be contemplation, it can be yoga, it can be movement. You know, going to the gym isn't reflection. Going for a run isn't reflection. It's good to unpack the mind. Yeah, but true reflection is about, how do I get more present? How do I get more reflective? And so in my experience, and any of the clients I work with, any of the listeners, if you can just create a little bit more reflection in your life, then you'll start to see fundamentally, even though it doesn't feel like it, we always have choice. Yeah, we always have the opportunity to make a choice. And the fundamental choice, Roy, is we get to choose how we feel. We get to choose our state of being. Again, it's a subtle yet a powerful distinction. Most people think it's the outside world that makes me feel something. And if you're playing that game, you're just playing the victim. You know, if you really reflect and look at the external world, nothing can make you feel anything. Now, the example I use, I know this can be a challenging concept for some people. You know, one morning you're driving to work, you're running late, you've got a really important meeting, someone cuts you off in the traffic. What do you feel like doing? Often you feel like you get angry, you get triggered, you want to take the head off. You know, a week later, you're calm, you drive into work, you've done your yoga, had a cup of coffee with your beloved, someone cuts you off in the traffic, and you're like, that's okay. Clearly they're in a hurry. Exactly the same external experience and a totally different internal experience. And when you realize you get to choose, one of the big decisions, a lot of people think it's about doing what brings you joy. The mastery is about bringing joy to what you do. Cultivate it from the inside out. Most of our listeners are probably some of the most privileged, entitled, abundant people on the planet. Yeah, if you're sitting there listening to a podcast, then you've got a level of your basic needs met. And as we know, if our basic needs are met, we can start to inquire about some of the bigger questions of life. And one of the big things is, where am I resisting life? Every day, every morning you leave home, Roy, there are two trains that leave your house. One is the resistance train and one is the flow train. And the flow train is where joy is, and the resistance train is where fear is. And again, you get to choose. Where am I resisting life? Yeah. Where am I resisting? Where am I blocking? Where am I playing the victim? As opposed to where am I bringing joy? Where am I bringing flow? And again, simple concepts. I'm not saying it's easy to apply.
And I mean, that's something that I'm always conscious. Now you mentioned about the driving, because I always say to myself, I don't know what's going on in that car. Like, I don't know, have they just heard some bad news about their own health, somebody with them, they're going through a divorce, you just don't know. And the other thing is, like, my youngest child, he's 10. I mean, I don't react. I mean, you get the odd time you get a young guy who's showing off and everything, that's a different scenario. But a lot of the time, because if you do beep, and if somebody isn't paying attention, and then they're concentrating, they could crash later on because they're worried about what they've just done and they're not focused. So I always kind of do that. But the other thing is, children are watching everything. You can tell them anything, but they see how you react and they know that you're calm. And that's the best way that you can be the teacher to the children.
Absolutely. Again, they absolutely learn from who you're being and what you're doing as opposed to what you're saying. And the thing with embodied presence, for any of the listeners who have a mindfulness practice, when you really lean into embodied presence, what you realize, again, and the studies are clear, the most effective parents, the most effective leaders, the most effective coaches, healers, any modality, what makes all the difference, and the studies are clear, it's the relational field that you create with the other person through your presence. So it doesn't matter what modality of healing, there are amazing modality of healing, probably some of the listeners who do all sorts of things, psychology, psychotherapy, feelings release, spiritual release. Yet the power of the healing is the power of the relational field. And in parenting, on True Freedom, our biggest download, Roy, of True Freedom podcast that I do was on parenting teenagers. So if anyone's interested to go deeper, and it was so popular because, and again, we can unpack it in more detail, but one of the key things is exactly as you say, your energy, your presence, your being is creating a relational field with the child. And we know the studies are clear, particularly with little children, is when they feel safe, when they get presence and eye contact from an adult, that creates the energy of safety. And when they feel safe, they meet the developmental milestones, whatever they might be. And so it is, I believe, the biggest gift you can give your children is your presence.
We talked prior to recording that I'm no longer with the mother of the child, but like with yourself, like you're 40 years married. It's when I grew up, that was kind of the norm. People stayed together and everything, but it's changed an awful lot. I think it's something like 40% in the US is divorce rate. It's like, it's gone through the roof. And what's the secret to a happy marriage? Like, obviously there's hiccups along the way, but to make it like that and stay in love and just care about the person, what's the secret?
Yeah. Well, I guess the three keys I would say, and it's a great question. I haven't been asked this for a while. The first thing is I work a lot with the polarities of the masculine and feminine energy. And again, for the listeners, this isn't about gender. This is about the masculine, feminine energy that runs through the universe, that runs through us. And so I'm more in my masculine and Amala's more in her feminine. And the polarity, north and south pole, in the universe is the spark of attraction. So if I cultivate the healthy masculine, if I cultivate my eros, my sexuality and sensuality, in myself and create a space, then that attraction, is there for a male and vice versa. Most long-term relationships, people get into their comfort zone because they're not leaning into the edge. They're not doing the work. They're not really cultivating the best version of themselves. And what happens when you get in your comfort zone is you just become companions and friends. It's like life becomes like, it's Thursday, we watch this television show. It's Friday, we go to this pub. You know what I mean? It's like there's no truth. So I'd say one of the foundations to long-term, intimate, sexy, juicy relationship is you've got to do the work on yourself and to own the predominant energy in you. And again, this can be same-sex relationships. It isn't based on gender, but normally opposites attract. Normally one partner is more in their masculine or feminine. The second key is absolutely committed to bringing my best version of myself. The fundamental fear and trigger for every human being I've worked with and I know is somewhere, there's a belief in me that I'm not good enough because I'm not lovable and valuable just for who I am. And if I don't value myself and love myself, my true self, not my ego, arrogant self, but if I don't unconditionally learn how to love myself and value myself, I'm always going to be needy. I'm always going to have conditions on the relationship. I'm always going to make it about the other person. And it's an inside-out job. You've got to be willing to do the work. Whatever work you've got to do, the shadow work, the feelings release work, the belief changing work, you've got to keep doing that work to love yourself. And then the third pillar, I would say, and again, I haven't reflected on this, is what I know, and again, I haven't mastered this, Roy, please, all of this for the listeners is theory. When you meet a mala on the next podcast, you'll find out about the true Bodhi. Yet, one of the tenets, I guess, that we have in our relationship is at some level, whenever I get triggered, whenever I get defensive, whenever I get frustrated, it's actually not about Amala. It's about me. She's just mirroring back a part of me that I haven't loved, that I haven't accepted. And it's not putting up with inappropriate behavior. It's not having clear expectations and boundaries. Yet, if you can anchor that in, if you can anchor into the possibility that I create the whole of my own reality, and that anything that comes back at me, including my beloved, that triggers me, sends my vibration wonky, it's just a part of me I haven't loved. It's just a part of me to heal. And so how does that feel? I haven't recited that for a while. Did that land?
No, definitely. And I'm just curious because, with clients, what I've seen a lot in the world, and this seems to be big in Poland as well, is, the pair meet and then the woman starts changing the man, creating the person that she thinks he should be, and he ends up being more feminine, and she hates the man that she's created, and he's been getting rid of his friends and everything. So and sometimes they can be suitable, but I've seen that a lot, and I was like, I would never want that, because it's like, it's very toxic, and even over talking over and putting them down in front of people, like, I don't tolerate that. I don't like when I see it, but there's a lot of people do that. They're putting down their spouse right in front of you as if he's not there, and it's like, I always nip it in the bud fast, but it's like, what's the best solution when you see that happening? Because I think when you're in love with somebody, you just kind of do everything for them, and then eventually your testosterone disappears, I suppose you could say.
Well, the key there is truth. And again, the foundational pillars, love, truth, and choice. So let me talk a little bit more about truth. So if you think about relationship, and again, I've covered this in some of the podcasts I've done. Relationship is really simple. It's not easy. So successful relationship, whether it's work relationship, parenting relationship, or with your beloved, successful relationship is to communicate your expectations and have them met. That's all it is. You think about it, Roy, when with the mother of your child, if every expectation you had of her was met, do you think you'd still be together?
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting, and if we apply it to marriage, is it's imagine Roy on the wedding day saying, here are my expectations of you for the next 15 years. Please meet them. It probably wouldn't land well.
Well, if somebody bought you a frying pan for Christmas or for a wedding present, you'd be getting that across the head.
Exactly. Because our expectations are moving all the time. And most of the time we're unconscious of our expectations. 90% of our day is our subconscious mind. That's why self-awareness, leadership development, meditation, we're accessing more of our subconscious mind. And so if you're willing to be truthful and honest with yourself first about the expectations you have of yourself, about the values you have on yourself, about letting go of the mask that you wear, and then, if appropriate, being rigorously honest with your beloved, you won't get to that place you've just shared. Because there's the healthy feminine and the healthy masculine, and there's the unhealthy feminine and the unhealthy masculine. Like any system, our body can work in a healthy way or unhealthy way. It's not good or bad. It's just the unhealthy feminine. Remember, the key driver for the feminine energy is connection and love, connection and love. The key driver for the masculine energy is freedom. And so the unhealthy feminine looks for connection and love in drama, in drama movies, in sitcoms, in daytime television, in chocolates, in argument, in shopping, in distortion. That's the unhealthy feminine, because she, if it's a woman, are not feeling their connection and love in their life and in their relationship. And so if it's got to that place where you're being undermined, where you're being devalued, where your partner is talking over you and criticizing you, the question I would ask myself is, where is she not feeling connection and love in her life? The next question is, if we look at the masculine, so the masculine's key driver is freedom. And the paradox for the masculine is true freedom only comes from true commitment. So most of the men I work with in marriage, metaphorically, most of them have their bags packed at the back door, and if it gets too hot in the kitchen, I'm out of here. They're not fully committed because they don't understand what commitment is. They think commitment is losing freedom, whereas commitment is the only place where freedom. So using your scenario, the question I'd be asking the masculine is, where are you not fully in? Where are you not leaning in? Where are you not telling your whole truth? Where are you not being clear on your expectations? Because that wouldn't work for me either. If I was being undermined, if I was being judged, but I wouldn't blame my partner. I'd start going, where did I violate my values? Where did I not tell the truth? Where am I not committed? Does that give you a bit of territory to answer?
No, I think any of the listeners going through this will understand what you just said. And you mentioned with your podcast that you kind of talk on teenagers and stuff like that, and the fact, like you've 4 kids and it's something like 10 grandkids, so you've a lot of experience with the children's, and I mean they go through their own kind of curves as well. Like my eldest daughter, she's 24, so I know the way it kind of. So with the kids, then what kind of advice would you be giving people?
and I think it's great these days, the way neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, all of those things, meditation, mindfulness, embodied presence. I love the way they all connect now. And so if you think about the relationship with your children, and if we split it up to younger children and then teenagers, what we know for young children, as I mentioned, is that, to meet their developmental milestones emotionally, physically, mentally, it's about being seen. It's about the ability to connect. The attachment theory model fundamentally is a model based on safety and presence, as I touched on earlier. And so for anyone who's parenting young children, as difficult as it is with a busy lifestyle, mortgages, those sorts of things, the biggest gift you can give them is presence. Then they feel safe, and then they'll meet their milestones, based on their developmental ability. The other key thing with all of children, the two keys that children are looking for is boundaries and consistency. That's the key. Now, those boundaries shift based on their cognitive ability. So little children, again, it's not a democracy. It's like we have to set boundaries. And mum and dad or parents have to be absolutely consistent and aligned with that. We all know what happens when mum says one thing and dad says another. The child actually gets scared because it's getting a mixed message. So, with your partner, if you're in a partnership, in a relationship, it's about what are the appropriate boundaries for this child at this age? And how do we consistently provide those boundaries? Now, where this gets really interesting is with teenagers, because we know the neuroscience is clear around the teenage brain, what's happening with the teenage brain, what's happening with the biology, the chemical. And so we know for teenagers, your son's 10, Roy, that often they say with a 12 or 13-year-old teenager, particularly young boys, at times take 10 years off their age, and that's their cognitive ability. Because the brain is actually pruning. I think Dan Siegel has a great YouTube we can put in the show notes around the teenage brain. And the studies are clear that the brain dewires to rewire. And so there are times when he literally will process like a 3-year-old, not through defiance, not through will, just through the biology. And anyone who's had teenagers, there's a point when they just go through the grunt phase. All you can do is get a grunt for an answer. It's actually a phase. It's a state. Again, I'm not saying it's acceptable, but I want to give people context as to what's happening. Now, the interesting thing, and you're going to face it soon, so in traditional cultures, having sat with many traditional cultures, the Aboriginal Australian culture, the Native American culture, there was always a rite of passage for children. And a rite of passage was an initiation into the next stage of our life. So for boys, for a 10-year-old boy, your son, so at 7, there's an initiation. Up until 7, they're a little boy. And then 7 to teenager, they're a big boy. And what that means is that things change, they get a few more options in life. There are also some different expectations of them. And then about 13, 14, they go from big boy to young man. And that's an initiation. In Aboriginal culture, the boys were taken away from the mothers, and the mothers would cry and scream, to make it a ceremony. And the boys were taken to the desert with the men for 30 days and initiated. Now you're a young man. Now you're moving into the warrior or whatever you're called. And then, normally around 18 to 21, you're initiated in manhood. And of course, our culture has a 21st where everyone just gets drunk and goes on a binge. And, there's not too much initiation. But the fundamental journey for the teenage around boundaries is, so the teenager's deepest desire is more freedom. as they grow, as they develop, as they become more like an adult. And the key, the context of freedom has to be aligned with the context of responsibility. Not responsibility from the old authoritarian parenting, responsibility from, if you want more freedom, it comes with a level of responsibility. So if you want to sleep over at your friend's, then you probably need to text me, to give me a bit of information. Or maybe I need to talk to their parents if you're 14 having a sleepover. Yeah. So here's the freedom and here's the responsibility. If you're going out at 16 and you want some alcohol, then I probably need to know you're in a safe place. Yeah. And again, I touched on, there are 3 types of parenting, Roy. Yep. There's the laissez-faire parenting, where there are no boundaries. And this is all about the child. And you see this in certain cultures or certain environments. Certainly, the stereotype places like, Ibiza, Byron Bay, Glastonbury, I'm not sure the equivalent where you are. There's a lot of parents where it's like, oh, little Johnny's going to be okay. He knows what he wants. He's just self-regulating. Yep. The child has no boundaries. It's all about the child. The other extreme is the old authoritarian parent. Probably what you and I experienced, where it was all about the parents. Seen and not heard. Little boys don't cry. You got to do it my way. Yeah. Both of those are extreme. The key is what's called collaborative parenting. It's relational parenting. I'm in a relation with this little person. Yeah, and depending on their developmental ability, there are certain decisions they can make. And how do we, again, set the win-win or no deal? How do we set the boundaries? How do we get clear on the responsibility? How do we get clear on the expectation? And so there's some tips and tricks for the listeners. Does that make sense with your son?
Definitely. I mean, like when you've both parents in the household, they should do that. They should agree, and not a case of because kids are very intelligent. They'll realize who's the weaker one. They'll go to them and they'll get a yes, and then they just kind of proceed based on that.
Yeah.
But not just in my own situation, but I've seen it with a lot of different people. When the child is split and it's, the parents are split and they're spending time in 2 different households, and you have totally different styles. Like, for example, there was a phone bought for the child today. I don't think any child should have a phone, but it's given, and you can't exactly say, hey, and then you're trying to kind of stop them being addicted to this, which by just research you can see it. And the other thing is just trying to have a common ground and try to agree. And sometimes, and I've seen it with a lot of people, not just myself, I've seen it with a lot of people, you've totally different styles. Like some, they're just buying things and they think that's parenting. Buy them the remote control car, buy them this, buy them that, but spend no time with them. And then you've the other person that's trying to do it. And like for me personally, I never want to badmouth the mother. I don't want to, because it's his mother. But at the same time, it makes the life harder when you know what's right and you're trying to keep your child on the straight and narrow and just do everything that's right. Like I get my son to clean the house with me. I said, it's our house. When I cook in, he gets involved in it, but we eat. He eats like same food as me. And it's like, I would say he's 10 years ahead of what I was at 10. But at the same time, I know it's a conflict because he's allowed to eat junk food. I won't buy, crisps and just sugar stuff and things like that. But that goes on everywhere. It's like there's people that are like, oh, keep them happy without actually thinking long-term health benefits and just a different knock-on effect. So how do you navigate that one?
Yeah. Well, I know we're not here to talk about your previous relationship. If it was another client, the question I'd be asking is, when did you know that there was an alignment in that relationship? When did you override your knowing and your truth? Because there's always a point when somebody knows this isn't going to work and we don't listen to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so that's the place where you didn't listen to yourself. Yeah. And now it's a matter of going, what healing do I have to do? Yeah. It's not about the other person. Again, it's about all that they are doing, all that she's doing is triggering parts of you haven't healed, you haven't loved, you haven't accepted. Every judgment, every projection, every defense, every righteousness is a part of you that you haven't loved. Now, I'm not saying her behavior is okay or accepted, but fundamentally, you can't change her. Yeah. But if you hold that energy of judgment, disappointment, frustration, anger, blame, victim, yeah, then good luck. That's the old drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Yeah. And so any of the listeners who are struggling with that, I would say, find a good therapist, do the work on yourself. If you're not doing the work on yourself, you're lying to yourself. Yeah.
But like,
you do the work on yourself.
Or for example, what I see is I'm trying to educate my child to make his decision, but it's hard because he's only 10. It's like, I'm trying to get him to be thinking healthy wise. And look, and there's times he just kind of, I have an app and I'm showing the quality of the ingredients and he looks at it and he throws it in the bin himself. Like it's kind of, so as much as I kind of understand what you're saying, it's more of protecting the child. It's not about hatred for somebody or going, you shouldn't do this. It's about, because I have kind of researched health and spent so much time, I know it's very hard to change a pattern when you're actually doing it. So it's not hatred for her for doing that. It's like, I never get aggressive sending or something. So I will say, look, this is actually very toxic, these ingredients in it and stuff like that. But it doesn't change. So that's not me working on myself. I mean, I'd be the first to put my hand up because, you know, if there are any issues that I say have, like for example, there was a time working anger, I never would be angry. I just let it build and on construction and then just snap. And I was like, I don't like that side of me. So I started researching why is that happening and then got that one to subside. But for like, I don't see that how working on myself. I get that don't be angry because it's like the poisons ourselves. If we're thinking of it, you're thinking it's your hurting, she's not even thinking about it. So that I get. But regarding the best thing for your child, you can't just kind of go, I'll do my thing, she'll do her thing. Because, like, for example, there was a cousin of mine, and their first child, they said, no chocolate, no nothing. Second child kind of went, it is what it is. Their first child is addicted to chocolate now because of kind of stopping them having it. So, you know, it's like being conscious of the different things that can have a knock-on effect. Like, you know, if somebody's allowed to be on their phone till all hours of the night and things like that, it's like you have to put your foot down even though you're not with the person. And that's not something to work on me. Like, how can working on me, nothing can change that. That's me being conscious of what everything does has an effect on the child.
Well, the two things I'd say with respect, it still feels like you've got some judgment of your ex. So whatever work you've done, the vibration I'm getting is there's still some judgment about the way she parents. Yeah. And so I'll just give you that, you know, support that that's the vibration I'd be calming. Like you're not unconditionally accepting and loving her. And until you do, yeah, he's going to get mixed messages. Yeah, so that's the first piece. Like you've got to do the work unconditionally and love that she's the mother of your child. You risk childbirth. Yeah.
No, that's honestly I am very grateful that she gave me my son. Yes, I've never. I totally acknowledge that.
Yeah, and the second thing is, if you think of the biggest gifts we want to give our children, you think about the work you've done on yourself and continue to do on yourself. Two of the biggest gifts we can give our children is critical thinking, discernment, and the ability to love themselves. Now at 10, he doesn't have the cognitive ability, and certainly as a teenager, he's not going to make all the right decisions for himself. So instead of making him or suggesting he does this and doesn't do that, particularly given, you know, you're having a lot of time with him, the approach from a collaborative point of view, remember, you can either go authoritarian, yeah, you can't have chocolate like your friends, or laissez-faire, have what you want like your ex-partner. The collaborative is, particularly at 10, as he moves into teenagers, is discernment, critical thinking, like not attachment. As soon as you go into attaching, he can't do this is bad for his health, he's going to rebel, he's going to push back. Like that with the chocolate. That was done from fear and attachment. Yeah, you got to be detached. The key, particularly with boys, what I say is, you got to play the long game. What is the man you wanted to be at 25? Yeah. And, you know, when you and I grew up at 16, we were leaving home. At 18, we were well on our way. It's about 25 now before they become independent. Their brains fully developed. And you got to play the long game. And the long game is, you got to say, let's have a look at these ingredients. Okay. So this one's got, what do you think? Like, okay, if you want to have the sugar, that's okay. What if, you know, with my grandchildren, when they have sugar, with one of them, I say, okay, let's just time the sugar dump. Let's just time the rush, and let's see when you collapse. Yeah, I'm not going to say no to this ice cream. Yeah, but let's have a look at it. And it's amazing that they're like, oh, fuck, Papa. Excuse the language. You know, I'm really buzzing with
don't curse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. But what I'm teaching them, and it's slightly different as a grandparent, what I'm teaching them is discernment. Yeah, the ability. It's the same with advertising, same with phone, same with TV. I'm always talking to them about it. Okay, tell me about your friends who are on the phone. What do you notice? What do you see with them? Oh, you know, they never come out to play, and they, you know, boys at computer games. I'm like, what do you observe? Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm collaborating with this little being. Yeah. For their cognitive ability, I'm giving them ideas. I'm giving them support. I'm developing discernment. I'm developing what would the most loving choice for you be? Do you want to sit and watch a computer game all day? Or do you want to come and have a surf with Papa? Like what, you know, and then maybe we can play the computer a little bit later. Can you see the slight difference?
No, and I mean, it's actually, because it's hard, because we're just talking for the first time, so it's hard to know. But like, I mean, I do that, and it's not that he doesn't get treats a lot, you know, and ice cream and stuff like that. Yeah. Not like hardcore bum, you know, because I know that by doing that in a minute, I have it myself. So, you know, and I just make sure that we do it. But for example, on the holiday that I took him recently, there was no internet, and it was like he even understood how good it was that he wasn't on the phone, and we were spending so much time close bonding. And as I said to him, which was a strange one, because we think when we're having fun, time flies. It went slow, even though we were having a fantastic time together. And I just said, like, if you're on TikTok, you're just scrolling, there's 3 hours gone. You're giving your time to somebody else. So, you know, he even came back and it was like, okay, look, I'm not going to touch my phone in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, I'm stopping. And you know, so he's conscious of that, and he's making decisions himself. I give him suggestions, but I don't push, because it's the magnet effect. I'm aware of that, like that when you do that, they resist.
And as you said, like, he's intelligent. He will know his mother's parenting style. If you can unconditionally love her, fully support her, do this for 60 days. Every decision she makes, agree with it 110%. You do that for 60 days, you will transform the relationship. Every decision. Fully support it, fully love it, unconditionally love it. He will know what works for him. Children are intelligent. And, you know, he's only 10. His cognitive ability is there. But what I say to anybody in relationship, is when you can unconditionally love the other, and not judge, again, so long as she's not putting him in unsafe situations or violent situations, your whole energy will change, his energy will change. He'll have discerning thoughts and ideas about both his parents. And at the end of the day, Roy, just so you know, and to any of the listeners who are parents, what I did and what I say to all parents is, you have an education fund and you have a therapy fund. And all of their therapy is going to be about you. So just be ready. All my kids did therapy as teenagers. They all got a coach, a counselor, a therapist. And I said to them, I'll pay for it happily. Yeah. And most of it's going to be about me. Yeah. And that's the human gig. Like, we so judge what's right, wrong, good or bad. Remember, I cannot know joy unless I've known pain. I cannot know happiness without sadness. Life is relative. We're going to have our pain. We're going to have our hurt. And if we're willing to grow and learn, get support, do the work, a therapist, a coach, whoever it is, no, he'll be an amazing young man.
Excellent. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I know you're going to give me the Freedom mini course as well for the listeners. So you might just let them know what that's all about.
Sure. If you go to, it's just www.freeminicourse.com, and it's a giveaway to any of the listeners. And the other, the True Freedom is the podcast that's on all the podcast apps, and www.bodhialdridge.com. We'll put those in the show notes. And the Freedom and Flow mini course is a combination of some teachings and meditation that I put together as a giveaway for the listeners. Because again, remember, each day you can be in resistance or you can be in flow. Yeah. With your parenting, with your ex-partner, with your life. Where am I resisting? Where am I judging? Where am I attached? And as opposed to where am I flow? Where am I in joy? And that's the work.
Brilliant. I'll make sure I'll put the links both on the audio and the video. And I promise you I'll do the 60 days because I actually get what you've just said. I think it's actually, yeah, it's good. And it's the one thing that kind of just is like the magnet for me. And I accept that challenge. I'm going to do it. And yeah, so yeah, thank you very much for all that you've shared. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Beautiful. Let me know in 60 days, Roy, but let's have a chat.
Okay.
All right. Love to you. Love to the listeners. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. So that's all for the meditation podcast. Be sure to comment. Let us know what you thought about what we discussed. You'll find everything on meditationpodcast.org. Until next week, take care. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you'll find my 6 podcasts on bio.link/podcaster. And also, if you'd like to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour, you'll find the information on that or on the QR code that's there. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and share with your friends because it really helps. Until next week, take care.